What was finally said between Donald Trump and Elon Musk at last night's Big X event can largely be defined as a rant filled with familiar lies and lines of attack.
That was the intro for their news segment. This is not an opinion show, last I checked. Last night, I'm sure you noticed a disturbance in the force as the X platform was rocked when two of the most influential human beings on the planet sat down and just sort of had a digital conversation with each other and let tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of us eavesdrop and take a listen. It was Elon Musk hosting Donald Trump on the X platform. And despite some technical glitches due to, bad actors trying to prevent a open conversation from happening, it went off eventually. And for over 2 hours, you got to hear two titans discuss what was wrong with the world and how to fix it. Without any editors, without any producers, without any commercial breaks, without any journalists fact-checking. It was completely natural and normal. This is how two people engage in a conversation. And it was glaringly obvious that one of the big problems with this on a political basis was not only did it reveal just how shallow and empty Kamala Harris is, knowing we were all thinking the same thing, that there was no way she could sustain herself with this kind of ongoing conversation, bouncing from topic to topic, from tech to international affairs to domestic policy to national security to immigration to pop culture. Not only was she incapable of doing it, but it became pretty evident very early on that the missing idiot in the room was a professionally trained journalist teleprompter reader to frame the conversation in their eyes and through their perspective, rather than through a perspective that we might care about, or for that matter, what the two people engaged in the conversation might care about. The lack of journalist in the room was glaring, it was obvious, and it was an existential threat to the corporate media that we've grown to know and hate. And so, how did they react? Well, exactly how you would react if you saw your entire existence questioned before the eyes of hundreds of millions of people.
Began with 40 minutes of silence and then a bropocalypse of politics. No matter how you frame it or what caused the glitch, what was finally said between Donald Trump and Elon Musk at last night's Big X event can largely be defined as a rant filled with familiar lies and lines of attack.
That was the intro for their news segment. This is not an opinion show, last I checked. This is their news report on how things went over there on the Musk-Trump conversation. And yes, they're biased. Yes, they're rooting for Kamala Harris and the Democrats. Yes, they're leftists who hate Donald Trump. But understand, as you see all of these reactions to what happened last night, that mainly they are terrified about their own bloated budgets and their own bloated existence. Look at how much money was spent on that set right there. And on her outfit, believe it or not. Even at Talbot's, they've got a budget. On her salary, on the craft services table that's just right off camera, where they have an endless flow of snacks and goodies and food. On the special cars that drive everybody to and from the studio that they all go to. All of the cameras involved in this. Elon Musk and Donald Trump sat down with a one-on-one conversation through their smartphones, and it was webcast throughout the entire universe. And we'll give you the numbers, but it's upwards to 1 billion people that have either chimed in live afterwards or have heard snippets of it in a 12-hour span since it occurred. And this is a person who's sitting there saying and realizing, oh my God, if they can do that and make news and deliver information directly to you without any filter and without us having to frame it, then why in the hell do they need me? Why do they need this set? Why do they need the craft services table? Why do they need the black cars to drive me to and from home? I better learn to code. That's what's happening here. Look at her face. That's what's happening.
Kamala wouldn't have this conversation. She can't because she's not smart. She's not a smart person. She is a radical left San Francisco liberal, and now she's trying to protect. Now she's looking like she wants to be more Trump than Trump, if that's possible. I don't think it's possible, but she wants to be more Trump than Trump. She's terrible, but she's getting a free ride.
All right, but did it do what it was designed to do, which was to put the brakes on Harris's momentum?
That's not what it was designed to do. It was designed to go over your heads and deliver information directly to us, we, the people, was also designed to raise money, and they did actually raise quite a bit of money with this. But that doesn't stop the mainstream media from criticizing this through their own lens. See, this is the power of being in the corporate-owned legacy media. If the whole purpose of this is to just deliver your policy positions directly to the people who can't go to a rally, people who aren't getting unbiased news from anywhere else because they have to watch it through cable news, if the whole purpose is to be able to deliver information directly to their smartphones without those filters, CNN, of course, as I mentioned, would be out of business. So they have to reframe what the goals were. Oh, this is just to stop Kamala's momentum. Well, the momentum that you've created out of nothing. Let's not forget, 1 month ago, Kamala Harris was a punchline in this town. People were saying, well, Biden can't step down because all they've got is Kamala Harris. And she's a disaster. That's what was openly said by most of the people right now who are claiming that she's a transcendent political figure because they've manufactured it. But the emperor can't wear this outfit for 90 days. It's going to be revealed sooner rather than later. All right, more of the conversation here about last night.
Expect out of this conversation that we're going to see tonight on Twitter?
Well, for one, I think it's going to be a very lighthearted conversation because Elon Musk has come out and endorsed Donald Trump. I expect this to be like a bromance type of an interview where they're supporting each other. I think that Elon Musk will let Donald Trump speak all of the falsehoods and misinformation that he wants. I mean, he's not a journalist. It's not his job necessarily. Does he want to be fact checking all of the information? So I think it's just a platform for Donald Trump to come out and say whatever he wants. But the thing to remember, Cassie, is like the interview audience here is what Donald Trump needs. You see JD Vance going on Face the Nation, right? Sunday shows, traditional media, because he needs to get his name out there. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump's going the opposite route, right? He's talking to streamers and podcasters. He's going on X. He wants to rally up that sort of fringe online base. That's what Donald Trump is doing here tonight.
Well, he's meanwhile threatening to sue establishment media like the New York Times, et cetera. Sarah Fisher for us this morning. Sarah, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, he's threatening to sue establishment media for, what's the word? Lying about him. I do love the whole, what should we expect to hear tonight? And then have somebody predict what we're going to hear tonight. This is how irrelevant these news shows are. Do you notice how when we talk about the news, we very rarely discuss what's going to happen in the future? You know why? Because this isn't the psychic news network over here. We talk about what is happening or what just happened and why it matters, and to blow away some of the lies that you're seeing from the media. They're filling time. What do we expect to see tonight? They say to the dwindling audience that they have of people who aren't going to tune in and watch anyway, so who cares? But the idea that Donald Trump needs to shore up the fringe, that's his job, where JD Vance is doing traditional media. Here's a really great revelation that maybe they should have as part of their little roundtable discussion. The fact that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz haven't done any media at all. At all. Kamala Harris just got the cover of Time magazine and didn't even sit with Time magazine to give them an interview. She got a beautiful photo spread for the cover of Essence magazine. And while she was sitting there posing, you would think they should have sent a reporter there into the photo studio. Madam Vice President, while you're posing for this photoshopped, retouched, glossy cover photo, perhaps I can actually, ask you a couple of questions. Like, for instance, you say you're going to be tough on the border. Why haven't you done that in the 3.5 years you've been vice president? You say you're going to bring down prices. Well, what have you been doing for the last 3.5 years when you've actually held political office? You say now that you want to remove taxes on tips. Why would you the deciding vote to actually increase taxes on tips and increase the IRS enforcement to get taxes on tips? One last question, Kamala Harris. Why should anybody believe your lies? But she doesn't have to face any of those questions. They're angry that JD Vance and Donald Trump are actually going and doing all of the things that they don't demand of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that incredible? And I'm not whining about it because they're not going to change who they are. I'm just shining a light on it so you know exactly who they are. So you ignore them, you stop watching them, and you keep your eyes focused on Election Day. But Casey Hunt wasn't done. She then had something to say about the X platform. By the way, a platform where she and all of her colleagues at CNN frequently engage in social media postings, but doesn't matter because they see X as a threat. They see anybody who doesn't play their game and read from their script a threat.
Musk's rise as a Trump backer comes as X has turned into a haven for the spread of misinformation. Since buying the site almost 2 years ago, Musk's site has struggled to control it on topics ranging from the election to the assassination attempt against Trump. Sometimes the bad information has been boosted by Musk himself, who posted a conspiracy regarding the attack on Paul Pelosi in October of 2022 before deleting.
So there you go. That's CNN, everybody. CNN calling X a, what was it, haven for misinformation? That's CNN, your 24/7 home of Russian collusion. This is CNN, the news agency that told you that the Steele dossier was 100% credible and worthy of nonstop coverage, but the Hunter Biden laptop is not reliable and is probably Russian disinformation. So we're going to ignore the Hunter Biden laptop, and we're going to focus on our entire newsroom's energies and budget on the Steele dossier and Russian collusion. That's CNN calling X a haven for misinformation. I do want to make one point, though, and applaud Casey Hunt, because that mention of Donald Trump's, the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, which only occurred 30 days ago, that mention would have been the only mention of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump yesterday, because that story doesn't matter anymore. The breakdowns and complete incompetence at the Secret Service, if not worse, at the Secret Service, the lies being told by the Secret Service and the FBI after the attack and during the investigation, that's not newsworthy to CNN. But at least she mentioned the assassination attempt. Oh, it was to slander Elon Musk as a conspiracy theorist, but still, I mean, good on you, Casey, for at least pointing out that there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. All right, moving on. What was actually said last night during the accident? Well, listen, there's going to be a lot of streamers who are telling you about what Musk said and what Trump said, and it was newsworthy, and frankly, kind of hard for us to condense a 2-hour and, what was it, 20-minute, Kevin? I couldn't stay up for the whole thing because I got to wake up early for my morning radio show. How long did it go?
It was over 2 hours.
Yeah, it was something like 2 hours, 10, 15, 20 minutes. Very hard for us to condense that. We've got a couple of highlights here. But honestly, in my opinion, the biggest part of this story, the biggest part of what happened, like, you remember the old phrase that goes back to the 60s when television news became, well, what it is now. The medium is the message. That was the phrase that was coined back then, and it became a big thing. The medium is the message. That was last night to a T. The medium, bigger than what was said, it was how it was said. The fact that we, the people, upwards to 1 billion of us, have been able to chime in on this conversation without any sort of gatekeeper. There was a moment, actually, when I tapped into the stream and I was listening to it, and I got a little overwhelmed emotionally to think that we're living in a time where we're able to do this, where you have the most consequential tech and financial guru in Elon Musk, who has arguably upended and reinvented the automotive industry in just 15 short years worldwide, and now has his sights set on space. He has reoriented the way the United States and other countries deliver cargo and other deliverables to orbit into space, and now beyond just the commerce of delivering items into space for satellite purposes, or for other economic or even geopolitical purposes, but he's now got his sights set on space exploration. He literally wants to colonize Mars. He could be ultimately one of the most consequential human beings of the 21st century, sitting down and talking to arguably the most consequential political figure of at least the last 50 years, one of the top 5 most consequential political figures of the last 100 years. And the two of them are just shooting the shit. And we're able to sort of eavesdrop and listen. And I know that Elon Musk is not an interviewer. And there were a couple of times when I was like, oh, I wish you'd follow up or maybe bring up this or bring up that. But that's because I'm an interviewer. But it wasn't an interview. It was just two guys talking about the things that matter to them. And you got the feeling, it's like, well, these guys agree on so much. This is actually really cool. And something that we don't get to experience very often. You wonder how often this happens. And by the way, for good, not like a Davos conversation or World Economic Fund conversation, but I mean, actually people who have not only done it, but are able to do it to actually improve the lives of human beings. I'm sorry if I'm getting Pollyanna-ish on you, but there's so much negativity out there, and there's so many Eeyores who are looking at the ground saying, oh, it's over. They're going to help Kamala win. Oh, all is lost. And I don't have time for it. Go somewhere else. I'm positive, I'm upbeat, and I was actually inspired by what happened last night. We should all be. When that's possible, then anything is possible. That's where we are right now in this world, and we got to keep focused on that. There's more on that a little later in the show. Let's get to what happened last night.
We unfortunately had a massive distributed denial of service attack against our servers. and saturated all of our data lines. Like basically hundreds of gigabits of data were saturated. We think we've overcome most of that, and so it's now time to proceed. But as this massive attack illustrates, there's a lot of opposition to people just hearing what President Trump has to say, and but I'm honored to have this conversation. I want to emphasize it's a conversation.
Yeah, that's interesting when he laid out exactly the kind of opposition to allowing people to hear what Donald Trump had to say. They had to overcome all of these technical attacks that they were dealing with on their servers when they were ready to launch. And you have to wonder, well, why? Why are people trying to prevent him from being heard? That seems ridiculous, right? I mean, who would be against that? And by the way, it didn't work because as of 2:45 this morning, the numbers direct from X was that the Space Post received 73 million views. During the same period, there were 4 million posts about Elon Musk and President Trump's conversation on X. All combined, those posts generated 998 million views. By now, it's well over 1 billion views. That means people who are either tuning in at various times. There were well over 1 million listeners concurrently throughout the entire thing. And then all of the residual views of snippets or commentary about it. That's over 1 billion views in just a 12-hour period since this occurred and wrapped up last night. So whatever efforts they attempted to keep this from getting out there, it obviously didn't work. But one wonders what kind of dirtbag didn't want this to happen. What kind of dirtbag is so against the free flow of information so against the free speech that they would want this prevented, actually blocked and kept from going in? And we have an idea of what kind of dirtbag would do that. This is what happened during the White House press briefing yesterday. This is a reporter for the Washington Post.
Elon Musk is slated to interview Donald Trump tonight on X. I don't know if the president is going to tune in. Feel free to say if he is or not. But I think that misinformation on Twitter is not just a campaign issue. It's a America issue. What role does the White House or the president have in sort of stopping that, or stopping the spread of that, or sort of intervening in that? Some of that was about campaign misinformation, but it's a wider thing, right?
Yeah, so that's a reporter for the Washington Post. Yeah, that would be the Democracy Dies in Darkness Washington Post. His name is Cleve Woodson Jr., and I'm sure Cleve R. Woodson Sr. is super proud of his little boy today. And he's really proud of that bachelor's in journalism and mass communication that he paid for at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Cleve is the White House reporter for the Washington Post. And, his beat, here's what he covers, everybody. He covers the White House, politics, political campaigns, criminal justice, and equity. Equity. His beat is equity. Hey, what are you covering today? Equity. There's a breaking equity story that I'm hot on the trails of. I've got some sources, confidential sources, giving me some blockbuster stories on equity. Cleve R. Woodson Jr. asked the press secretary at the White House what role the president of the United States has in stopping a presidential candidate talking on an open stream feed to the owner of Tesla, because his beat is equity and criminal justice and the White House. There was a clue in his question. Maybe you caught it.
Elon Musk is slated to interview Donald Trump tonight on X. I don't know if the president is going to tune in. Feel free to say if he is or not. But I think that
there it is. Hey, Cleve, nobody cares what you think. Cleve, if your question has to be framed within the confines of I think blank, then your question is irrelevant. Cleve, your job isn't to think clearly. I need to ask this question because, in my opinion, stop right there. I love it when they reveal themselves to you like this. I hope you're paying attention. I hope you see exactly who they are. This is the Washington Post. This is Democracy Dies in Darkness. Although, based on this question, apparently the actual new watch cry is democracy dies in sunlight. Democracy dies in transparency. Democracy dies when too many people can actually hear the people who are running for office speak what's on their mind. Without me filtering it for you, without me telling you what you should think, without me, Cleve R. Woodson Jr., framing it within my perspective, because I think democracy dies, all right. So then we had the governor of New Jersey this morning commenting on it. And how much do you want to bet that the governor of New Jersey didn't listen to 2 minutes of the Donald Trump Elon Musk conversation? But it doesn't matter. It's CNN. They do a morning show. They got to get a guest, and they got a governor who wants to get a cabinet secretary job. So he's going to go out there and he's going to beat up on the entire thing. So let's see.
Conversation with Donald Trump, saying this in part, that he thinks the country is at a fork in the road of destiny, of civilization, and I think we need to take the right path, and I think you're the right path, he told Donald Trump. Not a hard-hitting interview, but as Trump made the point to say he is doing interviews, Kamala Harris has not yet. Do you think that is becoming a problem for for you all supporting Kamala Harris, in that it's not just a scheduling issue?
I love the question. Is this going to be a problem for all of you who support Kamala Harris that she hasn't done an interview? Well, what do you think? We're going to seriously. I love that Elon Musk gets criticized. Well, it's hardly a hard-hitting interview. Darlin, what kind of question was that for the governor? Elon Musk is criticized for not asking a hard-hitting question. And this, could we hear her question again?
That is becoming a problem for for you all supporting Kamala Harris, in that it's not just a scheduling issue?
Yeah, boy, Elon Musk should have asked a hard-hitting question like that last night. Then he would have been able to join the club of journalists. Then he would have gotten his membership card. And what do you think the answer is going to be? What do you think the answer is going to be? Seriously. And by the way, and anybody, so she's actually buying this whole thing that the reason Kamala Harris hasn't given an interview is because of scheduling problems. I mean, last I checked, she was able to fly across the country to do a photo op with the cast of RuPaul's drag show. That didn't conflict with her very busy schedule. And by the way, they're sitting on a plane. You know, these news agencies, CNN and Politico and the New York Times, they're spending millions of dollars to have one of their reporters on the campaign plane with them, flying across the country from rally to rally. Why? Why? No, I'm seriously. You're the managing editor of Politico, and you're signing off on bills and expenses. It's like, well, we got to pay $3 million during the campaign season to make sure our reporters on Kamala Harris's plane, because of all the great coverage they're giving us. Why? No, literally, they can give you the exact same coverage sitting in their living room watching television. They're encouraging it. They're enabling it. They're promoting it. They're celebrating it. She's a transcendent figure.
You won't be surprised to hear I had no time for the Musk-Trump interview, so I can't comment on any content. But no, not at all. I think she's had an extraordinary several weeks. Tim Walz is an inspired pick. She's on a roll. She is, as he has said, she's brought joy back into the whole arena of politics. There'll be plenty of time to do interviews. And God knows one thing about last night, without having heard it, that was no interview. So when she does interviews, she'll do it with real journalists like yourself.
Well, buttering me up will get you very far. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and they know it, honey. Yeah, it'll be a real interviewer like you, or maybe George Stephanopoulos, or maybe Jen Psaki. I bet Jen Psaki gets the first exclusive. They're just that shameless. There'll be plenty of time to give interviews after the election. She's had an extraordinary couple of weeks. It's amazing what you can get done when you actually don't have to say what you stand for or answer any questions about, I don't know, maybe the entire nature of how you became the nominee for the party. Make no mistake, last night's Musk-Trump conversation on X absolutely broke the minds, brains, consciousnesses of the mainstream media. Just look at how they blanketed themselves in coverage. Who was this Mario Nafal who brought this to our attention? Just look at the headlines. From USA Today to Fox even, The Verge, Hollywood Reporter, CNN, CBS, New York Times, Guardian, Atlantic. It's all about Elon Musk and Donald Trump. The nature of the conversation, the parameters around the conversation, the technical aspects of the conversation, the chumminess of the conversation, the lack of fact-checking of the conversation, but nothing really about the conversation itself. The media in lockstep focused on the deliverable and the way it was delivered and the method of how Donald Trump decided to communicate to the voters rather than the actual substance of the conversation. Not only does it show their hand of how terrified they are of this new dawn that may be rising in the ability to get information outside of their gatekeeping role, but it also shows exactly why they're irrelevant. Because if they took their job seriously, they'd be spending some time talking to you about what Donald Trump had to say and why he's resonating with, well, about half of the voters in America, despite being called Hitler for the last 10 years. You know what? We rarely do this, but we're going to let the audience at Stephen Colbert's Late Show have the final word on this segment, because there was a very revealing moment when Caitlin Collins sat down for an interview, because she's a very serious journalist. You see, that's why they go on a late night comedy show, because they must be taken seriously. Although, to be honest, when I watch Caitlin Collins' show on CNN, I laugh more than I do when I'm watching Stephen Colbert. So maybe this makes sense. In this brief 10-second moment, you're going to see exactly where things stand with the corporate legacy propaganda media that we've all grown to love. Watch this.
I know you guys are objective over there, that you just report the news as it is. Oh, I know. CNN makes a. I know.
Was that supposed to be a laugh line?
I wasn't supposed to be, but
Sometimes these little moments happen spontaneously, naturally, unplanned, that really sort of crystallize exactly where we are as a country. I hope whoever owns CNN at this point, is it still Time Warner? I don't think so. AT&T, didn't they sell it off? I hope whoever is actually sitting in the boardroom that oversees CNN sees exactly what has happened to that brand, sees exactly where they are at this point. Because that, can we watch again?
I know you guys are objective over there, that you just report the news as it is. Oh, I know. CNN makes a. I know.
Was that supposed to be a laugh line?
I wasn't supposed to be, but I guess it is.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be a laugh line, Caitlin, but here we are. You might want to, instead of sort of uncomfortably giggling about it and wondering what's going on, you might want to look in the mirror, look at your rundown every night, talk to your producers, take a look at how you present the news every night, and wonder why, if anything you're doing over the 60 minutes you have responsibility and executive editor control over your content, whether there's anything you're doing that's contributing to that moment that you just experienced. I still have a little bit of faith in you, actually, because for those of you who don't know, Caitlin Collins, before she was at CNN, worked for a media company here in Washington known as the Daily Caller. It was run by a guy named Tucker Carlson, who discovered Caitlin and brought her into the fold and gave her start. So I know she's viewed her job through a different lens at some point in her life. She might want to provide a little reflection now and recognize that where she is not exactly where she began.